What I want to show you here in this lesson is how to make a Silverlight widget like this. It's interactive. You click on it and it shows the current time, and embed it in an HTML page like this one. Notice this is a plain vanilla HTML page. We can even look at the page source and you see that it's HTML with an object tag which points to a zap file, which is the Silverlight widget. And I'm going to show you how to do that very quickly. So first step, open up Visual Studio. Once it's opened, click on New Project. And if you haven't done this yet, your default still might be on Visual Basic. Go ahead and change that to Visual C# because that's what we're learning in this video. And click on Silverlight. Click on Silverlight Application. Give it a name. I'm going to call mine Clock 4. You can leave the location the same. That'll be your projects under Visual Studio 2010. The solution name will be the same. Make sure that it creates a directory and click OK. Now, because we're going to be embedding a Silverlight widget in any HTML page, it could be a PHP page, a plain HTML page, a Ruby page, anything that runs HTML, uncheck this box. Make sure you have Silverlight 4 and OK. So, go ahead and click this so that you're in the XAML, and I'll show you quickly a way to get what we just saw in that example at the beginning. Say stack panel. That's going to stack up these two objects on the page. That is first a button that we saw. The content of the button, that means what's on the button, is display current time. It has a click event. And I'm typing tab now, which is very nice of Visual Studio to create that all for us. And then after that, we have a text block. And the text is, let's say, test for now, so I can show you how this works. And that's all we have to do. If we run this, we see that we have a big, long button here and the word test. So welcome to XAML. It's not always what you think it is, but there's always a way to solve that. You learn these tricks as you go. Horizontal alignment left. So let's take this out for now because we want it blank at the beginning. I'm going to do right click here and say navigate to event handler. And this is the C# that we're going to execute when the user clicks the button. And that is going to be changing the text of the text box. So we have to go back to this text box since it doesn't have any text there. We can delete that and give it a name. The name is, let's call it message. I'm doing Control S to save. Going back here, saying message text equals, and now the current date time now, to string, and these have standard formatting. I believe capital G is a standard date string formatted. Control S to save, and let's see how that works. And so because of the horizontal line left, we have a button like this. We click it and we get the time. One problem with this is that this whole page, I'm doing a right click here, right click, is Silverlight. And we just want a small Silverlight widget, not a whole Silverlight application, so to say. So I'm going to go back into the Visual Studio, back into the XAML. Now watch this. This is what you need to do if you want to make a little widget. Delete the design height, etc. And just type in width. Give it an approximate width, let's say 300. And an approximate height, let's say 200. These don't have to be indented, don't worry about that. And you can see now if you click on this again, and we go into display mode, and this design mode in Web Developer, I'll call it Visual Studio because some of you might actually be using Visual Studio and its Web Developer is basically Visual Studio anyway. In Visual Studio 2010, this designer is much better than it was in 2008. So if you haven't upgraded yet, please do that so that you can use these features. Now, if you watch, let's see if we can keep these on here. If you watch me move this like this, you see that the width has changed here. And so this designer allows you to change the size of your widget visually. Here now we have 132.82. Or you can at any time go into the XAML and say, for instance, margin equals 10. And if I do a Control as we see that margin popped up there. So it's in Visual Studio now with 2010, it's becoming very nice. You can work either in the design or in the XAML. Of course, I need to actually move this out like that. Would be very nice. So we basically have our widget. Let's try it again. And we click it and it has the current time, so you can see how that works. How you can create the widget and then embed it in an HTML page so that it's not the whole HTML page, but just a part of it. So the way you do that, you have to stop the debugger and then change this to release and run it again. And let me show you what that did. If you open up your Explorer and go to your documents, you'll see a Visual Studio 2010 if you installed it with the defaults. Go in there and you'll find projects. Go in there and you'll find the name of your project, Clock 4. Go in Clock 4 again. Then go in Bin. Now you see debug and release. Go in the release. The release has files which don't have any debug information in them, which is the one that you want if you're going to copy this to an HTML page. So in the release folder, there are two files that you need. The ZAP file, XAP, and the HTML file. Go ahead and select both of those. I'm doing Shift-click. Now I'm doing Control-C. And now let's go to a completely different area under C, Webs, that has nothing to do with Visual Studio or ASP.NET. And let's call this Clock 4 as well. And just do a Control-V to copy these in there. And I'm going to even change this to index.htm, which might be the name of your file. Then do a right-click and open it up so that you can edit it. So let me show you very quick the changes you need to do in this HTML/CSS, just so that you can get this to work. Take out the HTML and body information, because what this is doing is making it 100%, which is the whole screen. We can leave that for now. The Silverlight control host, you want to take all that out so that it's on the left and not 100%. Leave all this in case there's an error. It'll display it nicely in the browser. And let me show you what the Silverlight widget is. It's everything between this object tag here, and this object tag is pointing to a Silverlight executable, so to say, which is the XAP file. Now, this object tag has a width and a height. This width and height has to be the same width and height as your, if we go back into Visual Studio, width and height of your user control, which is the widget. So let's remember 146 and 82. We'll go back into our editor. Yes, this is it. And we can still see 146 as the width. And I type in 146 and the height is 82. And I type in 82 and I save it. And I go into Explorer where I have the index and I type that again and I see that it still works. And now what we're going to do is change the color of the back, and so that you can see. Let me close all these other ones so that we can reduce the residue here. We'll go back into the file here and change some more CSS here. We'll put in a background color. Background color, let's call it beige. File save, and we see that now we have an HTML page. If we do a right click here, it is actually HTML, and only this part is the Silverlight widget. And you can see that if you go back into the editor here, you can work in the HTML, giving this a margin, for instance. Now it has a margin around it. So you can work in the HTML with the widget inside of it. So you have a relationship between them, which is very nice. And you can even exchange information between them if you want to get into Silverlight more. But let me just show you also that you can go into the HTML page and put HTML, for instance, in front of the object, in front, and HTML behind the object, which is the Silverlight widget, behind, and do a save. So you can see that this widget is fully embedded in the HTML page. So I hope you feel empowered. Now, anything you learn in C#, you can use this lesson to create Silverlight widgets to decorate HTML pages or give them new functionality.